Welcome to Radio OPAC. Radio OPAC is a division of Ohio Prison Art Connections. At OPAC, we connect people to the power of arts inside and outside of prison. My name is Edward Julian, and I will be your host today. We welcome all of you, including our friends in the correctional institutions in Ohio and other states via DVD of our shows. The shows are also archived on YouTube. Our guest today is Barb Fant. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Before we get started, let me remind our audience that there will be a live talk back following our 15-minute interview. The Zoom link will be posted in the comment sections. Hello, Barb Fant, poet and author of The Paint Inside and Out. Poetry preparation is an art form, and Barb Fant poetry for you has been your healing process. Your love of poetry is at the heart of your job. We know that in prison it can be challenging to get some alone time to write. Also in prison, some people are writing poetry for the very first time. So at the end of our interview, Barb Fant will recite a poem she wrote. Barb, I'd like to get straight into the questions because we had a great conversation, and I think you are a wonderful woman and very inspirational. So Barb, can you tell us, how did you get into writing poetry?
Well, thank you. First, I just want to say thank you so much. So good to be here with you. I'm honored. So thank you so much for having me. But I started writing poetry. I always say that I started writing poetry. I found poetry when I was younger. I always liked to write. I always loved the art of writing. But when I became a teenager, that's when poetry found me. So when I was 15, my mother passed. I also lost a brother-in-law. So I just went through a lot of changes and challenges, a lot of darkness, and I couldn't really talk. You know, I wanted to go to counseling. I wanted to go to therapy. And my dad was like, no, you're staying in church. And that was kind of his way of handling things. But, you know, I would go to church and not really fully understand what the pastor was saying. So I would go and take notes on the sermon, and then I would go back home and write them into a poem. And that became my way of processing. It became my way of prayer. It became my way of communication. And yeah, I mean, that's what started my journey. And then when I came to Columbus to go to college, I found an open mic called Black Pearl Poetry at the Brownstone. And I haven't left the stage since. I fell in love, and I've been competing nationally and performing as much as I can.
Yes, your poet. I went on your website and listened to some of your poetry. Like, it's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much.
Barb, you are a poet by heart and circumstances. Mm-hmm. You have gone through some traumatic experience at such a young age. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think, you know, just started off saying that my mother passed. So I think being so young, witnessing her go through her illness and then passing. And then my father had some struggles as well. So I left my home. I left where I was living and went to go stay with my aunt and lived with my cousins, which was beautiful. It was a blessing that I had family to go to. But I mean, I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. I'm not from Columbus. I'm from Youngstown, which we all know is probably not the easiest place to grow up. And so I saw a lot of things I shouldn't have seen. You know, I experienced a lot at a young age. And then my senior year of high school, my brother-in-law, he passed away from a brain aneurysm in our home. And so it's just kind of like boom, boom, boom. So just a lot of trauma. And then we know trauma begets trauma. If you don't deal with it, you know, it will resurface and come back in a different way. And that's kind of what happened. I ended up getting into some relationships that weren't healthy because I didn't know what a healthy relationship really looked like or should be. And so I ended up having to work my way through domestic violence and having to overcome that as well. But by the grace of God, I'm here. But it definitely served as an inspiration to a lot of my writing.
Mm-hmm. And you have done a great job. I mean, and I understand what you mean by that trauma begets trauma, because what we usually do, we just sweep it under the rug and think that we are okay.
Yep.
And I'm okay, you know, because you do wake up the next day and you're able to move forward. But then, you know, those situations is what usually happen once we start piling it on top of each other, piling it on and piling it on. I could just be walking straight past a person and someone just don't even really bump into me, just kind of graze me.
Yeah.
And I blow up.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think sometimes we lie to ourselves and then we end up believing our own lie that we're okay when we're not okay. And then sometimes I think even as a young person and growing up in the church, you don't necessarily have the permission to say that you're not okay. Right? You're supposed to keep on pushing through. And if I'm this, I'm that, I'm a believer, I'm supposed to be positive, I'm supposed to be joyful all the time, and I'm supposed to put on a smile even though I'm crying and hiding inside, you know? And so I don't think that we're always given the permission to say, it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
And I think I could have used that, but I found that in my art. My art gave me the space to say, it's okay to not be okay, and
Right.
release that here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just being Black in America, let's be honest, like just
Absolutely.
being Black in America, we have to deal with so much. And then we have to go into work and keep that smile on our face when I'm really not feeling okay. Like I'm really upset.
Yep, absolutely. Especially when you are maybe the only Black person in an all white space, right? Like there's a certain perception that comes with that too, you know, and you feel like you're carrying a whole community on your back sometimes, right? And so you have to be the one that's positive all the time. You can't necessarily project or, you know, really explain how you really feel, you know? And so I think that's a big part of it too.
Yes, and then the other part of that, Barb, is within our community.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to deal with it. If you're just the only Black person within that arena of white people, then you have to deal with it in your community, because now that's a sign of weakness, and people will take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So you have to be strong at all times, and then you go home and you realize, like, I'm really not okay. And that's when we turn to drugs and alcohol, and we allow those relationships to come a part of us, being verbal abuse and physical abuse. So all that plays a part. And, you know, just being able to say, I'm not okay, let me get some help, let me go to therapy. Because, you know, in our neighborhood, what we say about therapy,
it's taboo, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like it's amazing to see like a lot of people talking about therapy and rest and joy now. But that wasn't always the case. I didn't grow up with that, right?
No.
And so there's a poet that I follow, Toy Derricott, and she has a selection of poems, and it's called Joy is an Act of Resistance. So I've been using that a lot. And then I've also seen this rest as an act of resistance. That's great, but all of that is new, right? And I'm glad that we're at a place where we're at least able to talk about it, even if you may not necessarily accept it and take yourself into a counselor's office, you still are maybe having the conversation. Yes. And it's necessary. Like you can be a believer, you can be of a faith practice and still have a counselor. You need both of them. You know, I'm an advocate for both at the same time. So, yeah.
So writing poetry have become part of your personal transformation. What advice do you have for people who want to change a traumatic experience in their life?
Advice to change a traumatic experience in your life? I mean,
just deal with it.
I think you face it head on. You know, you face it head on. I think the only way we can actually overcome something is to face it and look at it and, you know, deal with it, wrestle with it as much as you can, be honest about it. And I think that the only way I got to the other side of a lot of what I've gone through is that, one, I believed that there was another side that I could get to. I believed that there was a place for healing, and I fought for it. And then two, I faced it. I faced what I was experiencing, and I didn't graze over my mother's grief. I went through it. And I think that's the only way to work through trauma and pain, is to go through it. You can't go around it. You have to go through it.
Have to take your head on.
Yeah. I mean, even like, I know there's so many different traumatic experiences, but death was a huge part of my life. But I knew that I couldn't go around it. You don't just get over it. You only get through it.
You get through it.
Yeah.
You're right. You have to face it head on. And that's part of that fear, false evidence appearing real. Where we're
Yeah.
so scared because we don't know what's behind that door. And when
Hmm.
you don't know what's behind that door, it's like, "Ugh, do I really want to try this? Do I really want to go through this?" But you have to go through it in
Yeah.
order to get over anything. It's
Yep.
like what you do in practice, you'll do in the game.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so you hear a lot of people say practice make perfect. No, practice make permanent. Continue to put in the work. And
I
then
like that.
Steph Curry shooting that shot, he continued to practice it. He
That's
continued
right.
to practice so he can stay in rotation. And we have to stay in rotation, whether it's going to see a counselor, whether it's writing that poetry like you like to do all the time, and as me as well. Or you know, having that mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, I think one of the things that has helped me in my life and it continues to help me is to speak life over myself
Wow.
and really believe in the power of the truth. Because I think so many times we might be experiencing darkness, but we're believing a lie. And what we need to do is combat the lie with the truth, you know,
Yeah.
and the truth about who we are, the truth about who God says we are, the truth about what we should believe about ourselves, and speak that over ourselves. And that's something that I have to do. It's a daily practice for me. You know, I'm not going to give into insecurity. I'm not going to give into darkness or depression right now.
It's
I know
not,
that's
it's
perfect.
not even on the table.
Not on the table. No,
Right.
we're not even going to let, you don't have a voice, okay? I'm going to
Yeah.
shut you out, right? I'm going to speak loud enough that I can only hear the positive affirmation that I'm speaking over myself until I believe it.
Yeah, I believe it. Speaking into existence.
That's right. That's right.
So in case you are just joining us, our guest today is Barb Fant. We are discussing why it's important to follow your dreams and have an outlet to release built up stress and trauma. We invite you to join us after this 15-minute interview for a live talk back with the Zoom in the link comment section below. So Barb, you are a poet and a woman of faith. When you are writing poetry and motivating someone who might feel like giving up, what do you tell them?
Speak life, keep moving, like keep pushing. That there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always light on the other side. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but know that it's there, that life is there. You have purpose, you have meaning. You woke up this morning. If you're listening to me talk, you woke up this morning, you still have breath in your lungs, you can still make it. That there's space for you. There's purpose.
And a lot of people just don't realize that if you have the opportunity to wake up the next day, that means you can hit the reset button.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't have to fast forward into something that might get you in trouble or could cause you pain or heartbreak. Just hit that reset button. You're able to wake up. And we're not perfect. That's the reason why what? Jesus died for our sin.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. That means that I will make some mistakes. I can get over this. Now it's my opportunity. I get an opportunity to say, hey, I apologize, and this is what I meant by that.
Yep. And I think, you know, there's that saying that every day you wake up. There's a poem I wrote a long time ago that says that you can always begin again. Each new day is a day to begin again. But I learned throughout my life that it's not each new day, it's each new moment. Every new moment. You know, you may have experienced what you experienced that morning, but it's cool. By 11 a.m. or noon, guess what? You get to begin again. You get to begin new and start all over. It's all right.
That's part of my slogan, begin, believe, become. I mean, no matter where you're at, you're going to have a new beginning in your life. Just start. Put in the work.
Absolutely. And have grace for yourself. Have grace for yourself and have grace for other people too.
That's so true. So the pandemic has changed things everywhere. We know that our prison populations have been deeply affected. How has it affected you and your style of teaching poetry?
Yeah, well, everything's completely virtual right now. So, I mean, that's one of the ways that it's affected it. I can't be in person with people. I have the opportunity to serve as the artistic director for Harmony Project.
Okay.
which is really exciting. But we go into facilities. We're able to go into 2 facilities. And because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to do that. So we've been able to use like Zoom sessions when we're able to and meet with the men and women that way. I also have been able to serve with Healing Broken Circles and being a part of the work that they're doing, where we've recorded poems and they've been able to send those into the prison. So that's been really great as well. But yeah, I teach teens every week. I teach a writing class through Transit Arts every week, and we meet on Zoom, you know, and so we do what we can. I try to keep them as energized as possible. But that's the way we're doing it, you know? And so I think one of the cool things about the pandemic is that even when I'm doing poetry shows and different workshops, is I've been able to be in like 3 or 4 different cities, 3 or 4 different time zones in a matter of minutes, right? So that's exciting. But I'm still not physically able to be with people, and I miss that. I miss that a lot.
Yeah, that interaction, just being with that crowd, because you get to see everyone. Like instead of just like on Zoom, you get to see their full body, the way they move, how they lean in, how are they looking at you, and you hear that and go ahead, Barb. That's
right. You feel it too. You feel it. Like I thrive off of that energy. Like if I'm like, I know somebody's rocking with me, I'm gonna give you that energy right back, you know? And so it's not the same through a screen, you know? It's a blessing that we have this, and I'm grateful for it, but it isn't the same,
So in prison, programming is often an option. On DVDs, our DVDs of these radio OPAC shows are going into the Ohio prison. What should people keep in mind regarding writing and reading poetry and work ethic in order to do well in your field?
So explain it one more time. Say it one more time for me.
So our DVDs go inside these institutions, and I'm just want to know, what can people do to be in this field, like their work ethic, and in order to do well?
Yeah, I mean, be honest, be yourself. You know, I think if people want to be in this field and to do the work, I think that you just have to be authentic. People thrive off of authentic stories. And I think that I really believe that we overcome by the power of the testimony. So I believe that being able to share our authentic stories and where we come from is a healing agent for other people.
Yes.
And so I think if people want to be successful, that's the way to go. You know,
just keep trying, keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even if you're in there, you're not teaching poetry or you're teaching your own poetry, you're teaching somebody else's. Be authentic with that, you know? Yeah.
That's true. So each week on Radio OPAC, we have a moment of reflection. Today we have Barb Fant reciting a poem. During the pandemic, many people are rereading and writing at home. You have a special treat for us today, right? What is the name of your poem, Barb?
Yeah, so the poem that I'm going to share, it's called House of Dust. And it's, it's pretty testimonial for me. So I will read it.
You got the floor.
Take it away. All right. You will build a house out of dust until you realize that the home is within you. When I realized I was being swallowed, it was too late. I saw the bullet swallow the wind and remembered how the clouds held up the sky, yea. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I am reminded that it's just that, a shadow, that these dry bones can still rise on tomorrow. Told death, you thought you had all of me. How I buried my mother at 15, watched my brother take his last breath at 17, visited my father on psych floors of hospital rooms for years. Then I ran into houses of men disguised like homes. You will build a house out of dust until you realize that the home is within you. When you pain out loud, and there's pain in your body the size of a whale stuck inside the whale, my body drifts and floats around me. Tell Jonah how I swallowed myself in the belly of my own fear and woke up swimming in the reality mind security scales. Now all I see is shadow of myself. I lived, broken girl, and made all the wrong choices. How I moved out of my house and her house to his house and hotels and couches, from home to house to where is my home? Is there a home etched inside a staccato for me? And oh Lord, I want to forgive the man who raised his hand. Forgive the broken black boy who had his back broken, so he broke mine. Failed to see I was ribbed, so he broke my spine. Forgive the black boy broken, whose daddy loved him hollow, so he hunts for housewives made of sheepskin and tongueless mouths. Father, forgive him, for he knows not what he does. And Father, forgive me, for I knew not who I was. I flooded my bones with suicide, and every demon who whispered into my eardrum staccato opinions that almost swallowed me whole. How I learned how to build a house out of dust until I realized that the home was within me. And then one day, I stopped doing all the things I thought I had to do. Stop being all the things I thought I needed to be, and remembered how I could write myself out of my own skin. My mouth, a boundary worth breaking. Remember what it was like to have poems written into me, to write myself into a poem so thick it spills salvation, to cough so many poems from my lungs that it creates sanctuary. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will no longer fear myself. How this life of mine was disrupted, but not over. And the light in me is the light in whom I serve, and what a sacrifice to go to every dark place and have to write life back into your life just for someone else to breathe. And oh, Jonah, I know you ran from what would carve you holy, for you didn't understand that the calling will always outrun you. My chaos was birthed in every ounce of normalcy I thought I needed to be when my freedom was found in just being me. So here is where I throw up my hands and tell myself to dance until every piece of devil that was burned within me falls into landing. When the neighbors told me of my house, I said my house of dust blew up in flames while I was inside, but I survived. Told them of the shadows, showed them my scales, that I was searching for a house through all of this dust until I learned how to find a home within myself. Thank you.
Oh my God, Barb.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I mean, it's like you brought tears to my eyes. Like, your voice is so piercing and the story is so powerful. I can't tell you how much I just thank you.
Oh my gosh. Bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Barb Fant, poet and author of Paint Inside and Out. Join us next week for another edition of Radio OPAC. And remember, we're switching our shows to Wednesday. Now join us in the Zoom talkback, clicking the link in the comment section. I just want to share, Bob, like Dr. Martin Luther King had a quote, said, we would not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Mm-hmm. And you is nowhere near silent, babe. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. What an honor and a joy and a blessing. Thank you. Truly.
Now y'all see us in the Zoom room. Thank you.
Every stumbling block stuck in our way. We're gonna make it happen. Do it today.